What fuels the seemingly endless conflict between Jews and Arabs? A strife that also echoes within the Muslim world itself. To find the answers, we must travel back thousands of years to the origin story of a sibling rivalry centered on two biblical figures, Isaac and Ishmael. These two brothers, both sons of the patriarch Abraham, would set in motion a chain of events that continues to shape our world today. Isaac would become the forefather of the Jewish people, while Ishmael is regarded as the patriarch of the Arabs and Muslims. This ancient conflict is strikingly similar to the modern-day tensions between Israel and the Muslim world. The Bible not only explains the historical roots of this struggle but also holds a prophecy about how it might one day end. This understanding is based on an old Jewish principle called Maaseh Avat Simon Labanim, which means, the deeds of the fathers are prophetic signs for their children. This principle suggests that the actions of our ancestors are not just history, they are prophetic blueprints that shape the destiny of their descendants. Similarly, Christianity uses a concept called typology, where figures and events in the Old Testament are seen as prefiguring future realities. In this prophetic lens, Isaac and his mother, Sarah, symbolize the people of Israel, while Muslim tradition views Ishmael and his mother, Hagar, as representing the Muslim people. When we view the story through this perspective, the pieces of a complex puzzle begin to fit together perfectly. The son of the human plan, Ishmael. The conflict began with a divine promise. God blessed Abraham, saying, "I will make you into a great nation, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." But there was a major obstacle. His wife Sarah was barren. In an era where a woman's value was often tied to her ability to have children, her infertility was a deep source of shame and sorrow. As years turned into decades, God's promise seemed to fade into impossibility. Overcome with despair, Sarah proposed a solution rooted in the customs of her time. She told Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave." She offered her servant, Hagar, so that Abraham could have a child through her. This decision, born of desperation, soon created new heartache. Pregnant and feeling superior, Hagar began to despise Sarah. In turn, Sarah's bitterness led her to treat Hagar with cruelty. Humiliated, Hagar fled into the vast, empty wilderness, her future seeming hopeless. But in her darkest moment, she had a divine encounter. An angel of the Lord appeared to her by a spring, offering a command and a blessing: "Go back to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." The angel then told her to name her son Ishmael, which means God hears, because the Lord has heard your suffering. It is here that the book of Genesis introduces a prophecy that still rings true today, describing a core aspect of Ishmael's descendants. The prophecy describes him as a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand against him. While this might sound offensive, it's not an insult. In the ancient world, the wild donkey was the ultimate symbol of untamable freedom and fierce independence, roaming freely and submitting to no one. This prophecy foretold a people destined to survive against all odds, but one that would live in an almost constant state of conflict. This prediction of endless conflict is tragically evident on two fronts today. The first is the deep internal divisions within the Islamic world, most notably between the Sunni and Shia branches. The second is the conflict with Israel. The son of the miracle, Isaac. Years had passed and Sarah, now 90 years old, had lost all hope. But one day, three mysterious visitors appeared at Abraham's tent and delivered incredible news: "I will surely return to you, and Sarah your wife will have a son." Hearing this from inside the tent, Sarah laughed with bitter disbelief. She no longer dared to hope. Yet God kept his word. Sarah gave birth to a son, and Abraham named him Isaac, which in Hebrew means "he will laugh." a name that would forever commemorate his parents' initial disbelief. For a time there was joy in the camp, but tension was brewing. The conflict finally erupted during Isaac's weaning celebration, when Sarah saw Ishmael mocking his younger brother. The Hebrew word for mocking shares the same root as the name Isaac, which suggests Ishmael wasn't just playing. He was challenging Isaac's position as the rightful heir. For Sarah, this was the final straw. She demanded of Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." The Bible says this deeply troubled Abraham, as his heart was broken by the love he had for his son. God told him to listen to Sarah, but also promised again to make Ishmael into a great nation. Though it pained him, Abraham obeyed and sent Hagar and Ishmael away into the desert. That somber farewell marked a physical separation that mirrored the start of a deep spiritual divide. Abraham's anguish reflects the historical wounds both peoples carry today. For many in Muslim countries and for Palestinians, the creation of Israel in 1948 and the displacement of their people was a catastrophe they called the Nakba, an event seen as a modern version of Hagar and Ishmael's expulsion into the wilderness. The battle for the covenant. Despite this painful separation, God had a plan for both brothers, though the plans were different. To understand why Ishmael's blessing differs from Isaac's, one must grasp the most important aspect of this story, the covenant with God. A covenant is far more profound than a simple promise. It is a sacred, binding, and special relationship. Through this covenant, God promised a unique relationship with Abraham's descendants through Isaac, with blessings that would flow to the entire world. But why Isaac and not Ishmael, the firstborn? The answer lies in a divine choice. Ishmael was born from a human plan, but Isaac was born from a miracle, God's direct intervention. The spiritual covenant is tied to the miracle, not the human plan. Ishmael receives a blessing of worldly greatness. Isaac receives the covenant to be part of God's sacred history. But the struggle between the sons continued long after their separation, this time within the sacred texts themselves. The Quran and the Torah have different versions of Abraham's life. The Quran firmly states that previous sacred texts were altered, which is why it presents itself as God's final, correct message. In the Bible, Abraham's ultimate test of faith is when God asks him to sacrifice his son, Isaac. But in Islam, the story changes completely, as Islamic tradition holds that the son Abraham was to sacrifice was not Isaac, but Ishmael. Why this change? Because being the son of the sacrifice makes one the most significant spiritual heir. By placing Ishmael in this role, Islam makes him the protagonist of the greatest act of faith, shifting the spiritual inheritance to his lineage. This battle to determine the true story has had real and violent consequences. The fight over sacred sites in Jerusalem is the perfect example. The most sacred place for Jews, the Temple Mount, is the exact same location where two of Islam's most important mosques now stand. It's like seeing one history physically built on top of another. The Western Wall, a site of deep significance for Jews, is known as the Al-Barak Wall to Muslims. This is why control of Jerusalem is so fiercely contested. They are not just fighting over territory but for control of history itself. It is one more chapter in the long, painful struggle to determine which story, Isaac's or Ishmael's, has the final right to the most sacred place on earth. A prophecy of reconciliation. But the prophetic interpretation of the conflict's end is not one of bitterness. On the contrary, though it may seem impossible, reconciliation exists. After a lifetime of conflict, the Bible shows a surprising scene that offers hope. When Abraham dies, the text says something crucial, and his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him. After decades apart, Isaac and Ishmael reunite to bury their father. In that moment they are simply two sons in mourning. This act is viewed as a prophetic sign for their descendants, a prophecy that peace is possible. The burial demonstrates that despite everything, God did not abandon Ishmael, and both remain Abraham's sons. This hope is based on God blessing both brothers. Though the spiritual covenant was with Isaac, the promise to make Ishmael a great nation was never withdrawn. In our current times, though a final resolution seems far off, some events have been interpreted as the beginning of mutual understanding. The most revealing aspect of recent peace agreements between Arab nations and Israel is the name they chose for these treaties: the Abraham Accords. For the first time in decades, modern diplomacy invoked the common father of Jews and Muslims, a public acknowledgement that their origin is the same: the third way, Jesus Christ. The Bible presents a third way, a solution that depends not on politics or men, but on divine intervention, the coming of Jesus Christ. The Christian faith presents Jesus as the definitive solution to human division. He doesn't take sides in the fight between Isaac and Ishmael. Instead, he creates a new family where old identities are no longer the source of division. The Apostle Paul writes that Christ is our peace, who has made both one, breaking down the dividing wall of hostility. This wall of separation represents all historical and religious enmity. According to Christianity, when united with Christ, a person receives a new identity that transcends their earthly one. They are no longer primarily Jewish or Arab, but part of a new spiritual family. This reconciliation occurs in two stages. The first is happening now, as peace and unity begin in the hearts of individuals who accept this path. It manifests in communities of believers from Arab and Jewish backgrounds who, despite the political conflict, already live as brothers in faith. However, the complete and final solution is seen as a future event. The Bible teaches this will be fully accomplished with the second coming of Jesus, who will establish a definitive and lasting peace on earth. The prophecy of the Prince of Peace from Isaiah affirms that Jesus' mission was to bring inner and spiritual peace. To break the cycle of hatred that began with Ishmael and Isaac, Jesus introduced a principle that is a true spiritual revolution, an idea that goes against all worldly logic. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So, which path will Abraham's children choose? The desert of hostility, or the unity found at their father's tomb?